Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Gushansky, and today I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about my struggles, my fears, and how I was able to make change. And it all started when I graduated 5th grade. I was at the top of my class in math, science, and reading. I was a kind and respectful student, and I was excited to start the next chapter of my life, middle school. But then, everything changed. I woke up and I wasn't able to read, I couldn't write, and with no exaggeration, I couldn't even add 1 plus 1. I developed OCD, tics, extreme anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of paranoia. Then, I got pulled out of school because I couldn't even get out of the car at drop-off. My parents started to take me to doctor after doctor, with them continuously turning us away, refusing to believe that there could be any medical explanation for my problem. About 6 months later, by a stroke of luck that was sorely needed, my parents found a possible cause, an autoimmune illness that, after an infection, results in brain inflammation. This inflammation then causes neurological symptoms, which was exactly what I had been experiencing. It would take about 2 more months until my parents could find a nurse practitioner up in San Jose who specializes in this illness. She diagnosed me with pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. This diagnosis set me on my course to remission, but it took 6 long years, endless treatment, and countless personal effort. My years with this illness not only affected my physical health, my mental health, but the quality of my education. I tried to go to Valley Middle School for 6th grade, but I got pulled out to do full online schooling. I tried to go to Valley another time for 7th grade, but I got pulled out again. I was lucky and found a charter school for 8th through 10th grade, which helped with my special needs, but unfortunately, my illness still affected my education. After my junior year, I thought back to how excited I had been to go to middle school. That feeling and that thought that there's something new for me, that there are new opportunities. And that's when I realized I wanted to return to CUSD for my senior year. After a lot of back and forth, looking at the 2 high schools, I finally chose to go to Sage Creek, and here I am now. Before I continue with my story, I need to give you a bit more context about my illness. I have autoimmune encephalitis. Autoimmune means that when an infection occurs, the body's immune system attacks itself. Encephalitis simply means inflammation of the brain. Now, this type of inflammation can cause lots of different disorders depending on what part is affected. But it could cause PANS, pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric syndrome. This is what specifically causes all those symptoms, the tics, the OCD, the paranoia, the mood changes, the behavioral changes, the cognitive degeneration. Now, depending on what infection originally causes the inflammation, it could be classified differently. My original infection was strep A. This means that I had Pandas. As I said previously, pediatric acute onset neuropsychiatric disorder associated with strep. This all leads back to PANS, and it causes those debilitating symptoms. Now, through all of this confusion, my parents fought to find me the care that I needed. But unfortunately, this isn't the case for other kids with my disorder. You see, since PANS shows as psychological and neurological symptoms, that's what it's treated as. Kids are prescribed antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, and this all greatly worsens their symptoms and can result in them being hospitalized. Now, luckily, there are treatments for this illness, like IVIG, an infusion that resets the body's immune system, and prednisone, a corticosteroid that directly reduces the inflammation. Yay, right? There's hope. But that's usually not the case. Most of the times, insurance companies deny coverage for IVIG, meaning that either families have to pay thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket costs, or there's just an absence in care. The reason for this misdiagnosis and mistreatment of children with pandas is a lack of awareness in the medical community. And that is exactly what I set out to fix with my Genius Project. When I originally heard of the Sage Creek Genius Project, my first idea wasn't even remotely related to my illness. I had found a love for biking on my road to remission, and I thought I could increase safety for road cyclists in Carlsbad. Now, although I was passionate about biking, I found that the impact and the project I would be doing didn't really motivate me, and so it fell through. We also adopted many guinea pigs over the years as therapy pets, and I thought I could help a local shelter get their animals adopted. But I felt the same thing about this project, that I wasn't truly passionate, and so I let it go. A few weeks later, my parents mentioned the idea that I could do my project on my illness. And to put it in best terms, I was not excited or happy at all with this idea. My illness and my past and the things that I dealt with were something that I didn't like to revisit, and I didn't like to talk to people about it. But only having 2 trimesters to complete the project and knowing it would be a good topic, I half-heartedly got to work on my first idea. I thought I could hold a fundraiser for kids with AE and pandas to hopefully raise money for research and treatment. Now, I should have immediately started reaching out to organizations as fast as I could, but I didn't. It was an extension of that fear I felt, that fear to deal with my past, and I just didn't. I eventually did about a month later from when I came up with the idea, but by then I didn't get any responses. About 2 months later, in November, I finally had a revelation. Raising funds for kids with pandas wouldn't truly help them, but raising awareness would. This new idea invigorated me, and I started to come up with my next plan. I would hold a medical conference. It would be for pre-med students, pre-nursing students, clinicians already in the medical field, community college students even, anyone who could possibly help to treat and help kids like me. My first step, though, is to find a presenter, because although I am very well versed in medicine and my illness, I needed someone with a bit more credibility. I could think of no one better than this woman right here, Amy Joy Smith. Amy is the nurse practitioner who originally diagnosed me with pandas. She's been in conferences around the world about the topic. She's been in documentaries talking about the struggles that families dealing with this disorder face. And she's even one of the co-founders of the largest pandas nonprofit in the nation, Pandas Network. Her son also developed this illness before she began to focus her practice on pandas. She didn't know it at the time, but she was going to go through the exact same struggle that me and my family did. When her son was diagnosed, she realized that she wanted to spend the rest of her life helping kids with this illness. And that's just what she did. When she heard about my project, she was ecstatic. She was really excited about the possibility of what we could do with this conference. And so we set a date and a time. The next thing I needed to do, find a way to host the meeting. Now, when I tell you that I have a newfound respect for the staff and IT team at Sage Creek High School, I really do. Setting up an online meeting, Google Meets, Zoom, is terrifying. If you get one setting wrong, if you get a time, a date, anything out of place, you will not have a meeting. There will be no one there, and all your hard work, your effort, will have been for nothing. It was a big learning curve, but I eventually managed to set the meeting, and I was good to go. Next, I had to find a way of getting registrants and attendees. Now, my original idea was to do this by reaching out to community colleges, and I had the perfect resource for that, my dad. He's the head anatomy professor at Palomar College and already teaches the students about pandas every year. So through him and a contact at Miracosta, I started sending out flyers. In a week, I had 41 registrants. Now this was amazing, and I was really excited. And about 2 weeks later, maybe about 2 days before my conference, I decided I need to make one last push for attendees. And that's when I remembered. Our old next door neighbor is a nurse in Orange County, and she was one of our biggest supporters throughout this entire illness. I reached out to her, and with that, another well-timed emails from college students, and the post to social media, I got 40 registrants, but not in a week, overnight. This included nurses from Orange County, doctors from the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and most impressively, the head of philanthropy for Rady's Children's Hospital San Diego, who is currently working to open a clinic for children with my illness. This was the biggest win I could have hoped for, and it got me really excited, because at no time at all, it was the day of the conference. I joined with myself, Amy, and my parents, fixed some last technical issues, and we started letting people in. I explained myself, Amy, the reason for this whole conference, and we got to it. Now, although so much of the anxiety I'd felt about talking about my past had dissipated leading up to this moment, it grew over the course of the meeting. You see, I had offered people to post questions in the chat if they had any, but I saw a grand total of 0. It made me worried that people weren't paying attention, that they weren't invested in this, and that everything I'd done had been for nothing. We finished up, Amy handed the reins back to me, and I asked one more time for people to ask questions. And then, people were. They asked questions about treatments, diagnoses, but it was more than just that. We had an occupational therapist ask how he specifically could help children recover from this illness. And we had a woman who worked with families with chronic illness ask how she could help them. It made me realize that people had been listening, and that if they ever saw a child like me, scared, alone, confused, in pain, hurting, and with no one willing to help, they would remember this conference. It took an hour and 30 minutes and 5 long months of planning, but in that time, I had done what I wish people would have done for me 6 long years ago. After the meeting, I gathered some requested information, a recording of the meeting, and some other basic information, and put it into a link tree. A link tree is basically a website where you can host any links you want people to see. With that, I got 99 people to view it, meaning that my message and my information spread further than just my conference. And that was it. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story today, one thing I want you to be able to apply, then it's this. Your struggles, the pain that you've been through, the things you've overcome, the struggles that you have dealt with are the greatest catalyst for change. Your unique experiences give you the unique ability to help others in a similar situation. And if you just try, if you just reach out, then you can make a meaningful difference like I did. Now, before I leave you, if you'd like to view any of my information, then you can scan the QR code here or go to bit.ly/AE Symposium. Thank you and have a good rest of your night.